Ukraine recently. Significant progress was made on the Bakhmut front. Two villages located south of Bakhmut, Andriivka and Krysivka, occupied by Ukraine. During the battle for Andriivka, the Russian 72nd Brigade was almost completely wiped out. Let's take a look today. How the Ukrainian city captured these two villages. They are concerned about. What impact does it have on the front lines of the war? On September 15, Ukrainian 3rd Commando Brigade announced Free Andriivka and those responsible for guarding the area. It is the Russian 72nd Motorized Infantry Brigade. They were almost all wiped out. The fighting in the area is actually already going on quite a long time. But in recent times, the fighting between the two sides was not fierce. Ukrainian 3rd Commando Brigade responsible for the offensive, within the last 2 days, launch a sudden and violent offensive, surround Andriivka, so that the Russian army and the main force in the village cut off, eliminate the Russian troops guarding the village one by one. The 3rd Commando Brigade released a battle report showing they killed 3 battalion commanders of the brigade and shot the brigade intelligence chief to death, most of the infantrymen of the 72nd Brigade, and a lot of equipment was destroyed. We start from the 3rd assault. You can watch the video released by the brigade. Autumn has arrived in Ukraine. The trees have withered. The entire village is now in ruins. No residents live there. That video shows Ukrainian soldiers clearing rubble. The whole video looks. It feels almost the same as the game screen. The 3rd Commando Brigade responsible for the attack. Their predecessor was the famous Yashu camp. When the Russo-Ukrainian War breaks out in 2022, Yashu camp is no longer a battalion-level unit. It's a brigade-level unit. The unit not only fought in Mariupol front, he even participated in military operations around Kiev. Later, after compilation, formed what is now seen as the 3rd Commando Brigade. It currently has 2 assault infantry battalions under its command, 2 mechanized infantry battalions and 1 tank battalion, and an anti-tank battalion. In addition, there is a complete artillery regiment. Their combat capabilities cannot be underestimated. This time it dealt a fatal blow to the Russian 72nd Infantry Brigade. It was also revenge for what happened to Mariupol back then. News of the destruction of the Russian 72nd Infantry Brigade. It has also been confirmed from the side. The former commander of the brigade was Lieutenant Colonel Venewedin. There was news on the Telegram recently saying that Lieutenant Colonel Venewedin kept calling his old subordinates. But there is no contact item. This Venewedin Zhongxiao is actually very interesting. As early as June this year, when Wagner evacuated Bakhmut, Venewedin Zhongxiao ordered the engineers of the 72nd Brigade laying mines on Wagner's retreat. He even personally led the soldiers to attack Wagner. As a result, including Lieutenant Colonel Venewedin, several soldiers of the 72nd Brigade were captured by Wagner. Even Wagner posted it online. Against Lieutenant Colonel Venewedin. Interrogation video. In that video Venewedin Zhongxiao said, the attack on Wagner was a personal act. He personally hated Wagner. While drunk, the mission to attack Wagner was issued. It looks like in the video. This loyal and filial piety was beaten badly by Wagner. Even the bridge of the nose was broken. Wagner had not yet launched a mutiny at that time. So in order to calm down the incident, Russian Ministry of Defense Relieved Lieutenant Colonel Venewedin from his post. These 3 months have passed. Wagner Chief Brigade. Already eliminated by Putin. The Wagner military group also ceased to exist. The 72nd Brigade, which was in conflict with Wagner at that time. Now almost all of them have been wiped out by Ukraine. On the war zone. Only this Lieutenant Colonel Venewedin. But I escaped this disaster. It's really sad. Except Andriska. On September 17. Ukraine announces recovery. The small village of Krychivka south of Bakhmut. Actually a few weeks ago. UK. LAN already controlled the high ground to the west of the village. And penetrated deep into the positions south of the village. After occupying the terrain advantage, Ukraine. The village was not immediately recaptured. Instead, it uses firepower to continuously weaken the local Russian army. Until recently. Ukrainian 80th Air Assault Brigade. 5th Commando Brigade and Ukraine. National SWAT team jointly announced. The village was recaptured. And post a video. Actually, the offensive in this area has been going on for quite some time. As early as this summer. Ukraine has already passed the village. West Canal. We can see it from the map. To the west of the village Krychivka. There is a small artificial canal. The canal was earlier. Line of contact between Ukraine and Russia. After crossing the canal, Ukraine gradually captured the area located to the west of the village. Some preset positions in Russia. The terrain of this area is higher than that of the village. Then Ukraine, based on these positions, slowly attack this village. Until the village was successfully captured. Ukraine seizes these 2 villages. There are several important meanings. First, pinned down a large number of Russian troops in the area. A military spokesman for eastern Ukraine said. Russia near Bakhmut. More than 50,000 soldiers were gathered. About 274 tanks. More than 1,000 armored vehicles. 150 large-caliber artillery pieces. And more than 120 multiple rocket launchers. In May this year. After Russia relied on Wagner to capture Bakhmut. Bakhmut. Become the most important part of Russia's propaganda war. The Russian media made a big deal about it at the time. Make this a glorious victory. At that time, Russia regarded the Battle of Bakhmut as. How high is it lifted? Russia now dares not to give up on Bakhmut. If Bakhmut is finally captured by Ukraine, Russian military leaders will also be unable to explain to Putin. So, Russia is bound to deploy around Bakhmut quite a lot of heavy troops. Prevent Bakhmut from being penetrated by Ukraine. Andriivka and Krychivka. After being controlled by Ukraine, it opens the way to the important cities south of Bakhmut. Gate of Epitny. UK. LAN will continue to rely on his own artillery superiority in the future. Move forward. I think the recovery of Bakhmut is a secondary issue. Contain the Russian army here. And consume Russia's vitality. That's what Ukraine wants to do most right now. Andriivka and Krychivka. These 2 small villages. Crucial for the fight for Bakhmut. But put it. Looking at the overall situation of the entire Ukrainian battlefield. It's not that important anymore. Let's make an assumption. If Ukraine were to spend capture of Bakhmut with the same loss, you can also spend the same time and energy to capture Tokmak. Then these 2 cities are important military towns. All have certain strategic significance. Who is more important? Who does Ukraine want to seize more? From the overall perspective. After capturing Tokmak, Ukrainian army is like a knife. Insert Russia's defense line. You can cut the whole thing horizontally. Russian deployment in the Zaporozhye region. But Bakhmut. It doesn't have that much strategic significance anymore. So I always think. Zaporizhia region. Such as Tokmak. It is the key to determining the direction of this war. Russia also realizes this. In the latest intelligence from the British Ministry of Defense on September 17, the report says, Russia is behind the Zaporozhye front. Around Tokmak, about 16 kilometers away. Strengthen defense. More checkpoints deployed. Anti-tank defense offensive and new trenches dug. This shows that Russia is increasingly worried about Ukraine's attack on Tokmak. The entire area is currently occupied by the Russian 58th Army, responsible for guarding. And currently, Ukraine is also trying to open up a new direction of attack. Recent news from the front line. Another region of Ukraine in Zaporizhye. Vuhledar launched a tentative attack. The region earlier this year. It is one of Russia's key offensive directions. Ukraine has laid minefields here. Will Russia? The attacking Marine Brigade was throwing away its armor. Ukraine is here. What was launched in the direction was a tentative attack. The area is far from. Mariupol is only 80 kilometers away. Like Tokmak, Veliki Novosilka, and the Vuhledar we talked about today. Fighting in these areas will determine the future direction of the war in Ukraine. This is the Wealth Accumulation Channel. Today's battle situation on the front line. Just share it with everyone here. See you in the next episode.